Well, good morning and welcome to Rodeo Houston's Rodeo Houston Live on this Wednesday morning. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Looking forward to a conversation with the outgoing chairman of the board and first lady of Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, Jim and Lynda Winne will be joining me in just a few moments. We're going to talk about the rich history of the organization and in particular how it relates to Jim and Lynda and their rich history here with the organization as well. It's a great story. It's a volunteer story, which is the key to the success and the culture of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, our volunteers. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. As always, we'll give everybody just a couple of minutes to get on board and line up here on Facebook Live. Thanks for tuning in. And a reminder for those of you that have already tuned in, we'd appreciate it if you'd start a watch party on Facebook. It helps the algorithms and helps create more viewers and get more of your friends engaged to hear about what's going on at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. We thank you for participating here this morning. Hopefully, if you're in Houston, you're staying dry, and everywhere where you're tuning in, staying healthy as well. If you wouldn't mind, we use the comments section on Facebook to get questions from those of you that have it for our guests. And also, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from, where you're watching from and enjoying. Hopefully, you're at home and safe, but let us know where you're watching from, anywhere around the world. We've got listeners and viewers tuning in each week from all over the world. Australia is always piping in with some viewership, as well as folks in India and Europe. So we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from and watching Facebook Live and Rodeo Houston Live. So my name's David Brady, and I'm the Chief Entertainment and Customer Engagement Officer at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And we're just a few moments away from being joined by the outgoing chairman of the board, Jim Winne, and his wife, the first lady, outgoing first lady of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, Lynda Winne. So we're going to invite them in just a minute. But first, I want to welcome everyone for tuning in and remind you that part of this ongoing conversation that we're having is to keep you up to date with what's going on with the rodeo and answer some of those questions you might have. And today in particular, we're going to talk about the last 3 years, but also a 40-year career as a volunteer for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo with Mr. Winne. For us, and looking at the success of the rodeo and all the things that happen, it's built around the volunteers and it's built around men and women like Jim and Lynda and their success in growing this great organization. So with that, let me give you a little bit of background on Jim, who began his career in rodeo as an actual athlete in the sport, including a 1981 Texas Rodeo Association Championship bareback rider. He's been a member of the rodeo since 1980, so 40 years. He served on the auction committee, on the calf scramble donor committee, steer auction committee, and Jim and Lynda both met while serving on the calf scramble committee. Jim was elected to the board of directors in 2004 and served as vice president from 2006 to 2008, became a member of our executive committee in 2014, and then, as I mentioned, for the last 3 years has been chairman of the board. So with that, let me bring in our special guests, Jim and Lynda Winne, to join us here on Facebook Live, on Rodeo Houston Live. And I'll start off with the first question. Jim, I'll direct this to you. I want to get this one out of the way because it's the tough question to answer, and it's what's on everybody's mind here the last few months. Let's get this one out of the way. Tell me, how hard was it as chairman of the board in your last year as chairman to see the rodeo have to shut down this year?
You know, that was probably one of the most difficult and emotional events of my lifetime. We got the call late one night that they were going to shut the rodeo down at 3 o'clock the next day. And it's almost an unbelievable event. And as we were talking to the county officials about shutting down the rodeo, you know, it takes a year to put this rodeo together. I mean, there's 1,000 different pieces that have to come together to put on the show of this magnitude in the fourth largest city. And so it's a huge operation. And so we're going to shut you down at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Well, you can't, there's no way to shut it down at 3 o'clock tomorrow. And so we're asking our staff and volunteers to come up with a plan to shut this massive operation down in as short a time period as we could. And so we were fixed to embark on something we'd never done before. And it affected so many people, David. I mean, you've got vendors. We had 1,400 exhibitors, livestock exhibitors in the barn who had just showed up, and you had to turn all those folks around and try to get them out of there as efficiently as possible in a very emotional time. So it was a traumatic experience, and it affected so many people, our vendors, our city, our county, our state. And I tell you what, though, you got to give it credit to the staff and the volunteers. They came up with a plan to shut this massive operation down. And when the county said, well, how long is it going to take? And I said, well, it's going to take more than 24 hours. And so I would say, David, you know the timeline better than I, but within a couple of weeks, we had a pretty good handle on winding it down. And, by the end of the month, it was pretty well, done. But I got to tell you, my heart and thanks go out to the volunteers and staff for pulling that off. It was a huge operation to wind down.
So Lynda, let me officially welcome you into Rodeo Houston Live, and thanks for joining us as part of this conversation. I'm going to give you a similar question, but a little bit different. Okay. Knowing how much effort, energy that both you and Jim, but in particular Jim as chairman, was putting in to make the rodeo great, how tough was it for you to watch him and the organization as we had to close down this year?
Well, for anyone who knows me, they know that I would cry about it because I'm very emotional, but it was so much in shock. I was so much in shock, just not knowing what to do, not knowing how to help, and seeing just everybody operate, even though we didn't really know what was going on or how to do things because we've never shut down a rodeo before. It was, looking back, I guess it's really cool to see how it all came together. But yeah, it was a lot of work and stress on him, and he stayed busy up until June 9th when he, passed the gavel to Brady. And I can tell you, he was working every day from that point on.
So let's move on to happier times, at least not as stressful times. I wanted to get that out of the way because everybody's curious and everybody wants to know how tough it was on everybody, but in particular the two of you. So Jim, what have you guys been up to since we had last saw you during the rodeo? Well,
believe it or not, we spent a lot of time talking about what we were going to do post rodeo, because for the last 3 years, your calendar stays pretty full. So you look at your calendar and you're kind of told where you're going to be and what you're going to be doing for almost an entire year. And you're going to go from that to not very much on the calendar. And so we'd actually spent some time talking about it. And so we came down to the ranch in Victoria County, and we managed to work through a little over 400 head of cattle with vaccinations and maintenance programs. And so we've been spending time at the ranch and spend a little bit of time down here at the Bay House. And
I do help with the cattle ranching, by the way. Yeah, I'm usually in the kitchen, but we even had Dr. Kelly Larkin, one of our new executive committee members, and her husband, Fernando, came down and helped us work cattle. He was a trooper because it was 1,000,000 degrees outside, and he stayed and helped, but they'll probably never come back again.
So tell us a little bit, Lynda, about the ranch, because I know it's a family affair. What do you guys have down there?
Well, so I grew up in Victoria, Texas, which how Jim found the ranch next to, where I grew up is kind of crazy, but we have, we do hunt deer and hog, and we obviously have the cattle. Jim got a new horse. That's one of our exciting things. TH, his name's Texas Hold'em. I don't ride, but we enjoy it. It's just beautiful, and it's open air, just so open, and it's really hot right about now, so we like it in like November, December. But
is it for you guys? It is a family affair, and you've got your daughter Mackenzie, who I know rides, and you've got, how much of it about having the ranch is, obviously, Jim, you have an amazing tie to agriculture, but how much of it for you is about the connection to family and to your roots?
It's all about family. My dad was a veterinarian and a rancher, and so I grew up in a ranching family. Ranching and rodeo have been a part of my life. I don't remember when it wasn't a part of my life. So it's what keeps me grounded. It is a family affair. I love the ranching operation. It's something that I'm very blessed to be able to experience, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. Even in my professional career, I've always gravitated back to the ranching lifestyle, and it's something I just truly love. It's a lot of work, and it's also challenging. That's one thing I love about the rodeo is promoting agriculture. It's not an easy lifestyle. It's hard work, and it's a commodity, and prices fluctuate. whether you're farming crops or raising cattle. So it can be a challenging business enterprise, but that's what I love about it.
I think it
So
also
no,
reminds him
go
of like riding bulls back in the day, because it gets pretty wild in those pens with the cows going through, and we use helicopters now to round up all the cattle, and it's a pretty neat thing to see how those helicopters fly around really low to the ground and basically pushing the cattle into the to the holding area. So it's a neat it's really cool to watch.
So Jim, for you, it goes back to your youth. You talked about your dad, but you started out as a cowboy and an athlete in the rodeo world. Tell us how'd you get started? What was the first event you gravitated towards, and talk about your progress as a young rodeo athlete.
Well, we actually started on my dad's ranching operation, because when he would pin calves up to wean, my brother and I'd put ropes on them and act like we were big time bull riders. And so we'd be out there riding the calves all day until he figured out they weren't gaining any weight because we were riding them around all day. And that's kind of how it started. And Cypress, Texas, where I grew up, had a rodeo every Friday night. And it was a huge social event, and it was a family event. So all of the families went to the Cypress Rodeo, and they had what they called a junior bull riding or if you were in junior high or high school, it was a junior bull riding. And so that's where I started riding bulls, was at Cypress when I was in high school. And then, of course, I went to national high school finals in Hallettsville, and then nationals in South Dakota. So that's where it all started. It started at a little hometown rodeo in Cypress, Texas.
Well, we've got a lot of folks. We're going to pause for just a second, let some folks recognize some folks watching. We've got people from all over the places I talked about. We've got a viewer from the eastern coast of Canada, and of course all over the Houston area in Texas listening in, and a lot of congratulations and thanks coming in for the two of you from our viewers as well. But with you guys out there on the ranch and having such strong ties to that, let's get everybody who lives on a ranch to give us a thumbs up in the comments. See how many folks are watching that have a similar tie or grew up on a ranch like you did, or you guys are now on the Lazy H Ranch. So, Jim, one of your focuses as chairman was on agriculture, and you really wanted to make that the heart, especially this last year, of your messages to the public. Will you talk a little bit about the importance of agriculture and how you see it going forward?
Yeah, David, if you look at the statistics, the farmer's aging. I think the average age is somewhere around 58 years old for the farmer rancher. And we have an ever changing landscape. I mean, urbanization, a lot of the landscape's changing. Areas where I grew up, for Cypress, Texas, for example, there were dairy farms and cornfields and ranches, and it's pretty much disappeared. It's a booming city now. And so you're having to grow our crops and our livestock on an ever shrinking landscape, and it's going to take education, technology, and promoting agriculture. I think 2% of the population feeds an entire nation, and so it's critical to our country that we promote agriculture. And it's not, as I said earlier, it is not an easy job. I mean, it is a tough way to go sometimes, and so we have to give the farmers and ranchers support and acknowledge the importance of what they do for our society.
Do you see it, Jim, changing much with this pandemic and the challenges we're facing right now? Do you see the importance, or at least recognition for the importance of agriculture to change?
Well, I think it gets people's attention when you go in some of the grocery stores and the shelves aren't as full as they used to be. It makes you stop and pause and say, okay, where's this going to come from? If this thing falls apart, where's our food source going to come from? So it's absolutely critical to sustaining our lifestyle.
So, Lynda, I know that the COVID-19 is a pause in work for you. And what are you guys doing to stay busy? I know you're at the ranch and you're at Seadrift. And what are some of the things that you guys do to stay busy this time?
So we spent the first 30 days, or left the rodeo and came down to Seadrift, which is sort of being quarantined anyway, because there's no stoplights here. There's barely a grocery store. So I got pretty creative and learned a few recipes. I learned how to cook a little better. Jim's laughing because he did not marry me for my cooking skills. But I did find an awesome roasted chicken that you do in the oven, and then an awesome Caesar salad recipe that absolutely love if anybody's interested. But so I did a lot of cooking and rearranging my kitchen so I could find out where stuff is. So we've also gained some weight probably too, but that's okay.
I know the last 3 years have been extremely busy for you as well as First Lady of the Rodeo. We're talking with Jim Winne, the outgoing chairman of the board of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and First Lady, outgoing First Lady, Lynda Winne. 4th of July is coming up. Any big plans for the family?
We'll have all the family down here. 4th of July is a big family affair. There's 2 times that our families get together. They all come to the ranch for Thanksgiving, and we probably have 50 or 60 people at the ranch Thanksgiving. So that is a big family affair. And the other one's 4th of July on the coast. So the entire family, in-laws, outlaws, people I don't even know I'm related to will be down here.
Oh, yeah. And my mom, I'll give a shout out to my mom because she is turning 90 on July 3rd. And we usually have a huge fireworks show down here. And one of our friends, Bubba Hall from Bubba's Boiling Spot down here in Seadrift, showed us a video the other day of all the fireworks that he bought, and it is a truckload. So for a little tiny Seadrift, we have an awesome fireworks show and a lot of people and a lot of dogs at our house too. So it's great fun. It's one of my best favorite holidays. I love to decorate and stuff like that.
So speaking of dogs, tell us about the non-human members of the Winne family.
Well, this is so sad. Okay, so I want to introduce you guys to my new buddy. He's asleep over here. And we had a Japanese chin, and we fell in love with this breed when one of them showed up at our house in Fulshire. We didn't know what they were, but this guy is a 12-pounder. As you can see, he's pretty big. And his name is Mouse. We call him Mouse. And we have another one that is 6 months old, and we couldn't get his agent to agree with the contract that we had. So he's actually in the vet. And but we want to give a shout out to Pepper, the breeder, who sent us our we call him Rico or Little Raj. We haven't named him after a friend because of his personality. He's very, very wild and crazy. But this guy is 8 years old, and he was a rescue, and we just love him to death. He's just he kind of looks like Grumpy Cat too, if you can see his face. I don't know. He's not going to give you a look, but
we've got a good picture up on the screen on the
so
Rodeo Houston Live.
I love him. I love them. But we love these breeds. They're hilarious and jokesters, and you kind of live for them because they pretty much dictate what goes on.
Well, let's not give the last name of the friend that Roger was named after.
Oh, okay. Camp. I'm sorry.
I'm sure Roger knows he has a pet named after him. So, hey, Lynda, Sandra Crook wants to get those recipes from you. How can she get that?
Okay, I'll email you, Sandra. Or I'll post them on Facebook. They're so easy. That's what I love. They're so easy and they're fail-proof. So that's what I like.
So, Jim, let's talk a little bit more about the rodeo and going forward. So you've handed the reins over to Brady Carruth, who's going to take over for 3 years. He and his wife, Zane, are actually going to be joining us on a Facebook Rodeo Houston Live here shortly. So tell me what you think, despite everything that's going on right now, or in spite of, what do you think about the future of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo?
Well, the state and the community, we've been through hurricanes, and we had Hurricane Harvey, we had the tax day floods, we've had the pandemic. The great thing about our state and our community is it's very resilient. And we will get through this, and the rodeo will be even bigger and better than it ever has been. It just seems like the volunteer, the employees, they figure out how to make it better every single year. It will continue to grow. The city will continue to grow. It's a great place to live, great place to raise your family. And the rodeo is a big part of the community. It's a fabric of the community, and it's very resilient. So I think it has a very bright future. I think it'll continue to grow. I think we'll get through this pandemic. The American people have amazing ability to solve problems, and this problem will get solved. Maybe not as fast as some of us would like, but it will get solved, and we will move and we will grow, and we'll get back to some semblance of a normal lifestyle.
Some of the folks that are tuning in want to just recognize we've got Claudia from Katy, and here's an unusual one that I'm not going to share the last name just in case there's a connection. I haven't seen a viewer tuning in from this distance before. A Roger is saying hi to both Jim and Lynda from 38,000 feet in the air.
Wow, that's pretty cool. He must be a high flyer, dude. I don't know. I wonder where he's going. What direction? Can you tell what direction he's heading?
I can't. No, not based on that. So, when you look at the future of the rodeo, Jim, and you think about the prospects to where we are now, and let's instead go back a little bit. In your time, not just as the chair, but also as a volunteer, what are you most proud of? Not necessarily for you personally of accomplishment, but just the rodeo itself. What are you most proud of?
You know, it's the heart of the volunteers. I mean, it's such an amazing group of people that show up and do what they do every year, year after year, and they just make it bigger and better. So I'm proud of the fact that it is a family affair. It's part of the Texas fabric of our state and our county and our city. And it brings so many people together from different walks of life. When you think about it, I don't know of any other venue that brings people together from all walks of life. We're all different. We all have unique skill sets, and that's what makes it work, is because we are different, but we all come together for a common cause, something we truly believe in. And whatever our differences are, we put those aside and we celebrate what brings us together. And it's the strength of those skill sets and the dedication of all involved, the community, the state, the volunteers, our employees, that pull it all together. I mean, this is a massive operation. And what I'm most proud of is the compliments that I get from people say, you guys make this look seamless. I'm glad they think so, because it does work pretty well. But some days you wonder how seamless it really is, but it does come together, and it is somewhat seamless. And it's the effort of all those pieces of the puzzle coming together when they need to come together. And it's just an amazing operation. I couldn't be prouder to be a part of such a massive operation that comes together as efficiently as it does. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I've had some conversations in the last couple of weeks with friends outside the state who aren't as familiar with the rodeo. And one of the things that everyone is fascinated by is 35,000 volunteers. Can you talk just for a moment, both of you, about what the heart and spirit of the volunteer means to this organization?
It's the heartbeat of the organization, David. And the other thing that I think is so cool about it, I mean, there's a lot of things I could say about what I'm so proud of, but out of the 108 committees, each one of them has its own culture. I mean, it has its own culture. It has its own functions. And I've always told people that want to get involved in rodeo, there is a committee out there that fits. If you're in sales, there are sales committees. If you're a working committee, there are working committees. But all of them serve a purpose out there, and they're a piece of this huge organization, and they just bring it all together. And I think it's the diversity of our volunteers that make it work. I mean, they all come from all sorts of walks of life.
It's the diversity. And I remember first moving to Houston, seeing the gold badge, and just immediately I'm like, what is that about? And I knew nothing about rodeo, really. I wanted to be a part of it. And so you go all over town and you see people with the gold badge, and it's that thing that unites us all. And you just feel a part of something bigger than you immediately. And when I started in 2002, which was the last year in the Dome, there were something like 14,000 volunteers. So in a fairly short amount of time, we've, almost, well, whatever that math is, we've had a lot more people, but it still feels like you're a family. It still feels like you're in a community. Yeah.
The other thing I'm proud of, David, is the impact it has on so many kids' lives. I mean, it makes a real difference to these kids, whether you're an exhibitor or a scholarship winner, and the families come up to me and they just can't thank you enough for how it impacted their lives and what a big difference it makes. So it does make a huge difference in the lives of these young people and their families. And it has the Youth Livestock Rodeo has a huge reach throughout the state of Texas and how it impacts people's lives.
So we've got folks tuning in from Alaska, from Idaho, and all over Southeast Texas, including friends in Ellinger, which is down southwest of Houston, East Bernard, Channelview. We've got the Woodlands, all over. It's a lot of folks tuning in, listening to this.
Who would have thought they want to listen to us?
And one of the things they want, and Lynda, I'll update everybody. I've been told that we're going to get those recipes and put it in the comments of this.
Oh, okay, okay.
Everybody can have
I give
access.
credit where credit is due. It's not, I didn't make this up, but I promise you they're so easy and good. You'll love them. I've given them to all my family and they love them.
So you talked about just what the rodeo means and the volunteers mean. Think back over 40 years, Jim, and then Lynda, for you as well. Was there a special, just one moment that really stands out as, you know, when you sit back on the porch at the ranch and just thinking about your time at the rodeo? Is there a specific moment that comes to the front of your mind of this was a truly special moment?
Oh, geez, there'd be too many of them to name.
I thought he was going to say when he saw me, you know,
Well-
made eye contact with me in the calf scramble room.
I
But
was going there, but you got a little ahead of me.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, people say,
Everybody knows
when's
we
your
met.
most memorable, when's your most memorable moment? I
Oops.
said, well, it better be when I met my wife at the calf scramble meeting.
You know, but I
So-
remember, for me, this is later, but I remember my first 4-H awards thing that we got to go to, and walking into the auditorium at A&M. And I mean, the energy was crazy, you know, just insane. And knowing that those kids put on that production, it is so quality. It was so exciting. And I had never seen them before. And I just loved it. I was just so hooked. That's when you really, you know, feel that impact that the rodeo's making. We talk about the money that we give to kids and stuff. And it just gives you hope for our future.
So I'm going to get you in trouble now, okay?
Who, me or him?
Both of you, but mostly Jim. Any favorite committees or special committees you want to call out and recognize? We always get the committees chiming in on comments to get recognized. You want to call any out specifically?
Well, first of all, before I go there, I want to tell you, each and every one of them is critical to our operation, okay? And they're greatly appreciated. The issue is there's so many of them, it's hard to get around to meet all the people you'd like to meet. So they all do a wonderful job. But yeah, I started on the Calf Scramble Donors Committee 40 years ago and made lifelong friends there. And I think that's what's so cool about the committee you're on. That committee becomes your family. We talk about our rodeo family, but it truly is a family. And so the Calf Scramble Donors Committee, I mean, what a great group. And I mean, they are there year in and year out. And I mean, you look around the room and you go in there, and I've known those folks for 40 years, you know, and
We definitely want to give shout out to like the wine committees and the crowd clubs, because they, you know, those guys work hard and they help us have a lot of fun.
service committee. Yeah.
That's what he told me to say.
So what are you going to miss the most? Not being, I know you're still involved and going to be very active, so it's not like we're saying goodbye. But in terms of having that direct everyday focusing on, one of the things I was really surprised by and pleasantly surprised when I came to the organization was that the chairman, like yourself for the last 3 years, it's an unpaid position, but yet you have an office and you were here almost every single day. And you were engaged more than most people spend on a normal full-time job they're paid to do. So your investment in the organization is not going to be quite that extreme in terms of time. Is there anything you're going to miss about having that direct, you know, getting your hands as dirty as you've been for the last 3 years?
Well, I'm an operations guy. I love operations. And so, you know, being in the mix of it, what I'll miss is being in the mix of all of it on a day-to-day basis. Fortunately for me, you know, I'd hit a point in my life where I'd sold my company and was looking for something else to do when the rodeo asked me if I'd serve as chairman. So timing was really good. And so it filled a huge void of going from a, for-profit company to a nonprofit company. And it allowed me to stay involved. And I've always said, I want to stay past my shelf life. And so when you're at the rodeo, you're in the mix of it. It's a huge organization and you're in the day-to-day activities and the planning of the next show. And I mean, that's exciting. I mean, when you're planning the next show, you're looking at your entertainer lineup, how many stars you've got signed, how the committees are meeting, the enthusiasm, and being in the middle of that is just an unbelievable experience. So I will truly miss the interaction with all of the people that put this show on, whether it's an employee or volunteers. I'll miss the interaction, the personal contact that I had. Because I've built some great relationships with the chairman, the vice presidents, a lot of the employees I have great working relationship with. And so I will miss the day-to-day interaction with them.
Folks at the Blankenburg Ranch wanted to say that they volunteer because they support the mission of youth and education in Texas, and thank both you and Lynda, Jim, for your dedication and support to the organization.
They're going to come help work cattle.
sounds like they could. And a lot of folks, including Nicole and Debbie, were very excited to hear you call out recognition to the wine committees, Lynda. So they were very appreciative of that. Jim, just a little bit of time left, and I want to get a couple of questions in about going forward again. I don't want you to share any proprietary information, but was there one thing or one specific thing you said to Brady Carruth as he took over the chairmanship this month from you? Any advice you gave him that you'd share with us?
Yeah, it's no great secret. Managing your calendar was my greatest challenge, because there's something like 800 events. If you really look at meetings, there are like 2,300 of them or something like that during the year. And so trying to figure out which one of those meetings or events or functions that you want to go to, so that in your 3-year period, you get around to as many as you can. And so I think I'm not going to say it was a mistake, but one of the things I learned early is my first year, if there were 4 events in a night, I tried to make all 4 of them. And you end up not spending enough time at each event to really get to know the people. And so if I kind of figured that out, is I tried to pick the ones where I thought I could spend enough time to really understand what they did, who they are, get to know them better. And so managing the calendar was really one of the biggest challenges. And so my advice to them is pick some of the, as your 3-year term, try to space them out and spend enough time at those events to get to know those volunteers, because it is well worth the experience to do that. But that was the tough part.
So Lynda, same question to you for any words of advice to Zane Carruth, who's the new first lady of the rodeo.
Zane is full of energy and fun, and Brady and Jim made executive committee at the same time. So that's when I met her and Brady, and they're going to be great together. We talked about a few things, but I think what Jim just mentioned about my favorite times were actually when I could sit down with someone and just have a moment. You could be away from, maybe all the crazy things going on, and just sit down and get to know someone and talk to them. So that's been so much fun, because I have made so many friends that I know I miss right now. I wish I could see them, but I can't wait to see everybody again. And we both wish Zane and Brady a bunch of luck, and they're going to do great things. We're excited.
All right. Well, Jim and Lynda, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your service to the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and everything you've done to make this great organization even greater. So we thank you. I thank you on behalf of everybody with the organization. Any final thoughts from either of you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many of our volunteers are out there, but I can't say thank you enough to the volunteers that I've built relationships with over the years. I can't think of enough to all they do, whether they're working committees or sales committees, but they do such a fantastic job. I just want to thank them again, and it doesn't ever seem like I can thank them enough. I also want to thank the employees of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, because they were great to work with for the last 3 years or so. And so it's been a great ride, and I'm very grateful to all involved.
Absolutely. Lynda? Ditto. Thanks. The staff was great and gracious to let me stick my nose in places and get involved in things, because I didn't really know what my role was at the beginning. So thanks to the staff. I thank, again, all the leadership, the volunteers, everybody for supporting my husband, because it's a great thing to have people say, hey, your husband's doing a great job, or we really support him, because I'm the girl that, I see him back in the background, and I know how hard he works, and I know how much he loves this organization. And so I'm just really grateful for getting this opportunity, and for all the people who just made our lives great.
Well, that obviously you can tell it's a big impact on you, Lynda, as well. So Jim, 40 years, but there's going to be a whole lot more for you at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. We look forward to seeing you around. And I thank both of you for your time today. Stay safe, stay healthy down on the ranch, and out there catching some fish and taking care of the cattle. So, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys all back here as soon as we can get back together. Thank you both for being on, and thank you all for tuning in today to Rodeo Houston Live. Our next edition will be coming up shortly. Look for notifications on that. We'll be joined by the current president or chairman of the board and first lady. That's Brady Caruth and his wife Zane Caruth. So look forward to doing that very shortly. Thanks again for tuning in, and everybody, please stay safe and stay healthy.
Thanks,
Bye,
David.
y'all.